To Queen's Park now, where the Ontario NDP is calling for urgent action after a vulnerable child died of a seizure after being left alone in a schoolroom in Trenton. Let's listen in live.
A lifelong and tireless advocate for all disabilities. And from the AODA Alliance. David?
Thank you. 1/3 students with disabilities in Ontario schools have for generations been treated as second-class citizens, not because educators want it to be that way, but because our education system is designed and operated on the bogus premise that it is first and foremost for kids without disabilities. Increased funding is, of course, essential, but it's only one part of the picture. We need the provincial government to step up to the plate to pass strong new standards governing all school boards, setting basic requirements for accessibility and safety for students with disabilities. During question period today, the education minister said he's waiting before he takes action to hear from a coroner's investigation. Nonsense. The minister and the government have sat for almost 2.5 years on a comprehensive report by a government-appointed expert committee detailing what needs to be done at the provincial level, legislatively, to protect accessibility and safety for students with disabilities. I had the privilege of serving on that committee. It reported almost 2.5 years ago that the provincial government has given no policy direction at all to 72 school boards on when, how, and with what safeguards an isolation room or sensory room can be used and a student with a disability left there. And no data is provincially collected on how and when they are used. We recommended that students with disabilities need provincial safeguards. Nothing has been announced since then. We need that action now, not after some coroner's inquiry perhaps reaches the same conclusion and gives the same recommendations that the government's been sitting on for almost 2.5 years.
Thank you, David. Kate?
Hi, my name is Kate Logue, and I'm Vice President of Community Outreach with the Ontario Autism Coalition. I'm going to start today with a statement that was written by Brenda Davis, Landon's mom, that she has asked me to read on her behalf. On May 14th, I received a text from my son's school saying there was an emergency. I tried to call, but the call didn't go through, so I rushed to the school as fast as I could. Minutes later, I walked into the classroom to find my son on a stretcher, receiving CPR. His hand hanging to the side, fingers already blue. That's when it hit me. This isn't seizure intervention. This is resuscitation. Landon was rushed to the hospital, and after every intervention available to bring my boy back, me praying to God not to take my baby, begging Landon to wake up, he was pronounced dead. I don't know how long he was gone before someone discovered him alone and cold in that room. The last time I saw my boy's beautiful smile was when I dropped him off at his school at 10:30 a.m. that morning. My last memory of Landon is in a casket surrounded by his favorite toys. Now I visit his grave every morning. I pick wildflowers for him alone. We used to pick flowers together. Now I leave them at his grave. I'm broken. My boy is gone. His laugh is a memory. His light snuffed out too soon. I will forever be haunted. And she asks that everybody hold their babies tight. That's the end of her statement. This should not have happened. This mom should not have had to write these words. And we should not be sitting here having this conversation. Vulnerable children with disabilities have a right to a safe and meaningful education. And parents should be able to send them to school without worrying that they may not come home at the end of the day. The Ontario Autism Coalition has been warning this government for years that a vulnerable child was going to die due to insufficient supports at school, and here we are. I stood here 4 months ago in this very spot, and we discussed a boy named Zach who had eloped from his school without the school even being aware. And he was found in the middle of a busy intersection in the midst of a January snowstorm with no coat on. Minister Lecce claimed that an investigation would be launched, and here we are 4 months later, and it is pretty clear that not a finger was lifted. Are we really to expect that he will launch a meaningful investigation into what happened to Landon? It's hard to believe that. This mother deserves answers about what happened to her son that day and why. The OAC has been advocating for years about the dangers that exist in our special education system when adequate supports and staffing are not provided. In what world is it okay for a student with a potentially deadly seizure order to be left alone for even minutes, let alone for what clearly seems like a lot longer period of time? As a community, parents of children with disabilities are demanding swift justice for Landon. And we are insisting that this government immediately commit to providing all children with disabilities safety at school. It is shocking that that's where we're at. We're demanding the bare minimum that our kids can go to school and be safe. We're not even talking about their access to a meaningful education. True systemic change needs to happen to the delivery of special education in Ontario without delay. Landon should still be here today, full stop. And this government needs to not only explain why this tragedy happened, but take immediate action to ensure that it never happens again.
All right, an emotional press conference at Queen's Park this hour about the death of an epileptic student in Ontario who died last month. This has sparked a lot of anger from parents and educators. The NDP and advocates are calling for urgent action and for more resources in schools for students with disabilities, saying they've received no assurances from the Ford government. That's a story we'll keep a really close eye on throughout the day.